In this video, we'll show you the complete rundown of how to install the Platipus B6 Anchor with a 20mm threaded rod using an excavator. Note the process is the same for the other bat anchors in the range. Unpacking the gear, you'll find the B6 anchor heads, a T-lock to connect the anchor head to the 20mm threaded rods, 20mm locking nuts, 20mm threaded rods, usually in 6m lengths, a domed load plate, and a domed load nut. The installation gear will consist of the drive end, 1.5m rod sections, a sacrificial end, a shank adapter, and the rod remover. The testing gear will consist of a test plate, the test jack stand, a 20-ton hydraulic jack, a hydraulic hose, a 200 kN hydraulic pump, a 200 kN hydraulic gauge, and a test sheet for recording the loads achieved. You will also need the following customer supplied items: a power source for powering the 200 kN hydraulic pump. This is usually from a small generator or a 3-pin plug nearby. A tape measure for recording the extension achieved. Note that extension refers to the distance the tendon extends out during the load locking phase. This will be covered off in more detail later in the video. Spray paint, ear protection, safety glasses, gloves, a clipboard and a pen, and a grease gun for lubricating the drive rod ends. Let's get started with the installation procedure. Before driving the anchors, always check for surfaces that might be buried below the surface. Firstly, let's assemble the anchors. Note the 20mm threaded rod is a left-hand thread. Thread a 20mm locking nut onto the end that will take the anchor. Using an Allen key or screwdriver, measure the approximate depth of the hole inside the T-lock. Adjust the 20mm locking nut to suit. Screw on the T-lock and tighten using a pair of spanners. Connect the anchor head to the T-lock by pushing the T-lock in at a right angle and then rotate 90 degrees to lock it on. To keep this connection secure while driving the anchor in, insert a bat wedge into the gap between the top of the T-lock and the slot in the anchor head. To keep the locking nut tight during the driving process, tape up the join using industrial tape. The next step is to assemble the drive rod set. When connecting the drive rods, clean and lubricate the threads with grease as you go. And note these drive rods have a left-hand thread. Firstly, connect the drive end to a single drive rod section. Connect a sacrificial end to the other end. Once assembled, all sections should be hand tight. Slip a shank adapter onto the end and carefully guide the concrete breaker pick into the shank adapter. Before you start driving the anchor into the soil, it is vital to have a dedicated person as a spotter to communicate with the excavator operator. This ensures the anchor is driven in at the correct angle and depth. Note the driven depth will always need to be deeper than the design depth, as the load locking process will reduce the depth by around 2 to 3 times the anchor head length. Therefore, it is important to factor this in before you start installation. The excavator operator can then activate the breaker and drive the anchor into the soil at the specified angle. Stop once only the sacrificial end is showing. Remove the sacrificial end, fit another drive rod section, then reconnect the sacrificial end and shank adapter. The excavator operator can then repeat the process. Drive rod sections can be added as required until you have reached the desired driven depth. Note you need a minimum of 800mm of threaded rod sticking out to commence the load locking process. As you progress towards the final stage of installation, it's a good idea to spray a mark on the threaded rod to help you know the target depth. Remove the sacrificial end, fit the rod remover, then connect the rod remover to the excavator boom using a D-shackle. Sometimes a chain might be needed. The excavator operator can then use the boom to pull out the rod section from the soil. Now the anchor has been installed, we can move on to the load locking process. The first step is to place the test plate. Sometimes you may need to prepare the surface to be reasonably flat beforehand. Place the test plate. Make adjustments to the surface behind as needed. The process is quite different when installing against a retaining wall, however the principles are the same. With a retaining wall application, you'll generally use pieces of timber to make the necessary adjustments. Screw on the first locking nut until it is touching the test plate. Fit the test jack over the threaded rod. Slide on the 20-ton hydraulic jack. Fit the hydraulic hose to the 20-ton jack and the other end to the 200 kN hydraulic pump. Screw on the second locking nut onto the rod until it touches the top of the 20-ton jack. As best practice, it is recommended to put up a string line to help identify any movement with the testing setup that could distort the test results. Start filling out the testing sheet. Open the pump tap, turning it so it is in line with the hydraulic hose. Run the pump by pressing the run button on the yellow controller. You should now see the 20-ton jack extend out and pull the second load nut. Once the top of the 20-ton jack reaches 100 mils above the casing, turn off the hydraulic pump tap immediately by turning it to be perpendicular to the hose pipe. This will lock the pressure and give you time to record the gauge reading. Carefully reach inside the test jack stand and retighten the 20mm nut until it touches the test plate again. Open the tap. This should cause the 20-ton jack to protract again. To speed up the hydraulic jack reset, you can gently tighten the top locking nut using a spanner. You can now repeat the process and run the hydraulic pump and continue repeating these cycles until you reach the desired load. Note, you should reach the desired load after achieving an extension that is within 2 to 3 times the anchor head length. If you exceed this extension and still don't appear to achieve the load required, contact your Cirtex representative for advice. On some projects, the project engineer may require a creep test to be carried out. If this is required on your project, contact Cirtex to discuss this further. Now that your anchor has been installed, you can dismantle the testing gear and fit a load plate and a load nut as specified.